Mushrooms are rich in vitamin B2 and D, and they help reduce blood cholesterol. In addition, they are good for heart disease and high blood pressure. Koreans savor these mushrooms in many everyday dishes. Today, we will prepare one of the mushroom dishes, Posotchon-gol, or mushroom hot pot.
안녕하세요. Welcome to More Than Kimchi. I'm Hwa-Young-jung. Just about at every meal, Koreans do enjoy at least one soup, stew, or hot pot. Today, we're going to make one variation, 버섯전골, mushrooms hot pot. Before I go any further, let's meet our chef and our guest today.
네,
선생님 안녕하세요. 오셔서 감사합니다. And here also we have Melanie. Hi, Melanie.
It's good to be back.
Thanks for coming again. So today we are making 버섯전골. Obviously, 버섯, the mushrooms are the main ingredients. So I'd like to show you the mushrooms first. Here we have three kinds of mushrooms, 표고버섯, 느타리버섯, 팽이버섯. So some you might know as a shiitake mushrooms, enoki mushrooms. This, I think, 느타리버섯 might be the perfect name. Sometimes you might call it as a trumpet mushrooms. I don't know, but this would be a 표고버섯 again, 느타리버섯, and 팽이버섯. And other than mushrooms, we have beef and tofu and green onions. These are slightly thinner than regular onions, so we call 실파, means thread onions, but you know it's a little bit thicker than thread, but the name is 실파. And for broth, we have 다시마, which is kelp, and wild sesame seed. We'll talk about that a little later. For beef seasoning, over that side, we have soy sauce, sesame oil, vegetable oil, and we have sesame seeds, chopped green onions, and garlic, salt, and sugar. So let's start. So we should start with the mushrooms.
예, 그러면은 먼저 이것은 항상 우리는 마른 거 있는 걸로 젖은 걸로.
yeah. So today I want to show this 표고버섯, the Chinese mushrooms or shiitake mushrooms, Melanie. These are fresh ones. We've been using, you know, with other dishes a lot of dried 표고버섯, but this is fresh one.
Now, can you use the dried in this dish?
If you have dried ones, you can soak it in water for 30 minutes. So it'd be same. But the flavor actually is a slight different. You know, always the
And
fresh
the texture
vegetable
is not as good.
Texture is
so
different.
what about using somewhat different mushrooms? I know in the West you can easily get porcinis or ceps, maybe portobellos.
Yeah,
Could you use any of those?
You can use those dark kind of mushrooms. And the white kinds, if you don't get enoki or those 느타리버섯, those white button mushrooms would be a nice substitute.
Okay.
So what shall we do first?
느타리버섯이 크니까 좀 이렇게 갈라주세요. 먼저.
So
많이.
these are, I said, the 느타리버섯. You just tear it to a nice size. So
Oh,
you
may
can-
I ask Mrs. Han a question about cleaning these before? How do you clean them?
이렇게 가볍게 한 번만 씻어주세요.
So you don't want to, you know, wash it too hard. Just rinse it very gently. That way you want to keep the shape. These are rather delicate.
이것도 마찬가지로 이렇게 씻어줘요.
Yeah. So this one, fresh one too, you do it very gently. And you cut the stem.
밑에를. 그래서
Shall we keep the shape the way it is? So this one, you don't have to make it too small. So just by size, you will just tear it.
이 버섯은 그냥 먹으면 이렇게 이렇게 썩지요. 그래서 항상 데쳐야 돼요.
Yeah. And the mushrooms, it has a certain flavor that you don't just cook directly. We always boil in the salt water before we cook. So we're going to boil it once after you cut it. So if you pass one dish over there, let's pass the ones we already cut to.
많이 좀 해주세요.
Yeah. And this, you and I will just tear it.
근데
Yeah.
뭐 송이버섯이라는 건 양송이
예, 예.
그것도 괜찮아요.
And also there's a mushroom that's it's gourmet and expensive. I don't know whether you've heard of pine mushrooms.
Oh, yes, yes,
Those you
they're
could
delicious.
use. Yeah, if you can afford these days. But it's very seasonal. You don't have it all the time. But when they're on market, the real delicate, nice aroma they have.
Well, you know, when mushrooms do come into season, the wild
Yeah.
mushrooms, it's wonderful to have a dish that you can make with them.
Right. Those are the real distinctive, flavor with the
늦가을에.
mushrooms. Late autumn, those times.
여기에다가 끓는 물이 있으면은 소금 조금 넣고서는요.
So we will boil this to get rid of certain kind of, I don't know how to describe this. Sometimes you have, fruit that's not ripe, that you have certain flavor that you
Kind
don't
of a
want.
green taste.
Sort of, yeah. This has sometimes that flavor, so you want to get rid of that by boiling it briefly in salt water. So I think we did that. 선생님, you're gonna,
예, 그것도 이제 요거
yeah.
데쳐놓고서
So after
하고요.
that, we will boil these mushrooms.
요거는 팽이버섯인데 밑에
예.
이렇게 모래 붙어 있으니까 떼서 한번
Yeah. These are 팽이버섯 or enoki mushrooms. These you don't boil, because it's so delicate. You will cook directly the way it is, but we'll just cut the bottom part.
Now, these ones I've seen all over the United States,
Oh,
and I've
is that
seen them in
right?
France.
Uh-huh.
So they're becoming
So
more
become
popular.
very popular. And as you can see, it's very delicate, not only the looks, but also the flavor. So this often we use in the soup dish because it really gives a nice, delicate flavor.
And how long? I didn't see. How long did you boil that?
3 minutes?
Only 3
Yeah,
minutes.
just a short
yes.
time. And it's not really boiling as much as just
Yeah.
gently simmering there.
Just to get rid of that flavor that you don't want. And as you cook, they reduce the amount. So you want to use it plenty because once you cook, it's not as much as what you see over there. So there's a 팽이버섯 here, and that's 느타리 버섯 that we are boiling, and we just boiled the 표고버섯.
찬물에다 한번
예.
담갔었어요.
And we dip in cold water. It's all ready to be cooked.
이거 한번 양념 한번
Yeah.
해보시겠어요?
Shall we do that? Let's ask her.
예, 간장 조금
예.
넣고
예.
하고서
So this, you've seen so many seasonings. So same as this beef seasoning. So start with over that side.
You want me to season it? Okay, a little bit of sesame
Yes.
oil.
근데 참기름
And then the soy
Soy
sauce
sauce.
and garlic.
갈릭은 조금 넣는 게
Just a
좋을지도
little
몰라요.
bit.
왜냐하면 향이 먹는 거예요, 버섯은.
Some salt.
You're right. And the garlic or green onions, you don't want to put too much because you're going to keep that nice flavor of mushrooms. 그래서 선생님 그거 언제 끓이셨죠? We
네.
boiled the 느타리 버섯 and rinse in cold water. So 2 kinds of mushrooms are ready.
And a little bit of sesame seed.
Yes.
예,
Uh-huh.
예, 이제 조금 쓴맛이 나온 거예요.
So this water you are rinsing that kind of bitter flavor from the mushroom. That's why you boil and rinse in cold water after that.
Some sugar.
Shall we put a little bit of sugar?
아니, 국물을 먹어야 되기 때문에 달게 안 해요.
So we wouldn't put any
Okay,
sugar.
not
That's
this
what you
time.
asked. Yeah, that's good. Shall we put soy sauce here too?
그래요.
Same.
여기다가
Yeah.
이건 제가 양념 한번 해볼까요?
And this side,
여기다가
Mrs. Han will put all the
간장
seasonings.
조금만 넣고요.
Soy sauce,
그다음에 여기다가
sesame seeds,
그다음에 참기름 정도만
and
넣을게요.
sesame oil.
예.
That can be plenty too.
아까 여기 소금물에 했기 때문에 간은 좀 있어요.
And this has a little bit of salt already because you boiled in salt water. So we'll just keep it that way.
그래요.
So mushroom is all ready.
그다음에 이제
And then
고기도
beef.
이렇게 채를
Right.
썰었어요. 채를 썰. 이것도 마찬가지로
Yeah.
양념 좀
Beef
해주실래요?
seasoning, now you can put all those different kind of ingredients. Chopped
Okay.
onion, chopped garlic.
요것만 빼고
Other than
달지 않게.
salt, I'm sorry, other
Other
than
than
sugar.
sugar. Everything
we put
but
all,
sugar,
yeah.
huh? All
The
right.
reason you don't want to put sugar here because we want to enjoy with the broth. It's not like bulgogi or other stuff, so you want to omit the sugar and the rest will use it all. 그 다음에 뭘 할까요?
빨간
Next.
고추 약간은
Yeah.
조금 매콤한 맛이
Yeah.
들어가야 좋기 때문에
This red pepper is not real hot as a Mexican pepper, but it is have a spicy flavor. So we are using just a little bit for color.
That's important
Yeah.
for the listeners to
Yeah.
know because it looks
Yeah.
really hot.
Yeah.
It's more like an Anaheim mushroom, Anaheim pepper that is not that hot.
No, it's not that hot. And also it gives nice kind of spicy flavor to the broth. So nice addition.
이제 보통 우리는 김치 담을 때 이걸 말려가지고 이제 김치 넣죠.
So what you see, red pepper, the powder in Korea called gochugaru is same kind of, pepper, but dried, and then you make a powder. But these are the fresh ones. Okay.
이것도 이제 채를 썰을 거예요.
Then the ingredients, we still have the tofu and then 실파, the thin kinds of green onions.
저렇게 수프 우리
예.
음식은 그 손으로 해야 손맛이 난다 그래요 보통요.
That's a one very good advice
엄마가
to
할
you.
때는.
Usually in Korean cooking, we don't use spoon. We use your hands, and then you mix it. So that way, the spice all goes in very well to the beef. So next time.
I think that's great advice, and I'll do it when I'm not on camera.
엄마 나서 때.
So it's important, when mother prepares the food in Korea, she uses hands, especially for vegetable dish or meat. That way you make sure all the seasonings goes into the meat. This will cut into a sort of same length, about 4 centimeters or
Okay.
2 inches.
Oh, that's clever the way
Yeah.
you do that, so they're all the same length.
Same length, right. And then I'll put it back over here.
굵은 파를 넣으면
예.
너무 단맛이
Oh,
많아서
I
이제.
see. It's interesting. These are almost, the flavor is like chives, and this is slightly more stronger than regular green onion. And when you cook regular green onion, it becomes kind of too sweet.
Yeah.
So you don't want that flavor.
gets soft as well.
Soft and kind of slippery and sweet flavor. These still maintain its flavor. It's nice.
So if you needed to, you would substitute chives.
Chives, yeah. Or maybe green onions. Some part of green onions, I'm sure you can use it.
근데 여기에는
Yes.
두부를 좀 넣어서 이제
Yeah.
그러니까 이거 다 넣어야 돼요.
You can cut this part.
이렇게 돼서
So you make a block, kind of thick size, 1 centimeters thick, like that. So if you make it too thin, I'm sure they break. So this is kind of a nice size.
All right,
That's
I've
good.
done that.
Yes. So the ingredients are all ready. We prepare the mushrooms, beef, and we have onions, 실파 here, and then tofu. So it's time to make the broth.
이 들깨를 곱게 갈았어요 일단.
Yeah, and I would like to show you, I explained to you before, we are using wild sesame seed for the broth. And these are very different from regular sesame seeds. I think we have it over there. Let's compare.
Oh, yeah, they look
See,
completely
they look different, a lot darker, and size is different. And the wild sesame seeds has a distinctive flavor. We sometimes make oil too.
Yeah, I try.
Yes, sure. Can you see the difference from the regular sesame seeds?
Yeah, they have a more grassy kind of taste.
Yeah, so remember to use, if you can get some wild sesame seeds, that's what we will use. And these are just powdered wild sesame seeds.
And how do you powder them? In a mortar and pestle?
기계에다 돌렸어요.
Or you can use a food processor.
Or
these
like
days.
a coffee grinder.
Yeah, grinder, yeah.
그러고서는요 이제 이 국물을 만들 때 맹물을 안 붓고
Yeah.
이 다시마로 했어요.
Right, yeah.
이거는 어젯밤에 불려놨던 거예요.
Yeah. I also would like to tell you about this broth. This is, I called before, dashima. These are kelp. And we make a broth like this. And if you don't get the dashima, I think you can substitute as a vegetable broth. Or even water would be fine.
What about
because
chicken broth?
Chicken broth, I'm sure you could use, but this broth is very delicate. Doesn't have that much flavor. Dashima just give you a slight sweetness of the, the seaweed, and this you soaked it in water overnight, and then you're going to boil it just about 10 or 15 minutes, not too long.
Sometimes in the West, when we want a light broth like that, we can use some of the bottled clam juice and water. Maybe you could get that kind of
I'm not
flavor.
sure. Clam juice might too fish kind.
taste,
Yeah, so probably vegetable broth
Or
might be
water.
a nice substitute. So here you mix that broth and then the wild sesame seeds,
이렇게 해서
and you go through the sieve because the color is kind of too dark.
This is a very fine
Yeah,
sieve.
it is, and then the broth will just have the flavor of the sesame, or I'm sorry, the seaweed, and also the wild sesame seed flavor.
그러니까 한 5cm 정도에
Yeah.
물 5컵 정도로 다시
So about 5 cups of water for 1 piece of dashima.
And how long was it in there?
이거는 담글 때는 하룻밤이고
Yeah.
끓일 때는 한 5분 정도.
Yeah. So this has been, soaked in water for overnight. If you don't soak in overnight, you can maybe boil for 5 minutes or so.
이렇게 해서
So there we have the broth there. Interesting broth.
이것만 갖고는 진하니까
Right.
저기 좀 같이 합쳐서 끓여줘.
Shall we do that? So we will mix here. This is just the dashima.
네,
Dashima broth we already made. We'll mix with the
합쳐서.
wild sesame seeds.
It's got a very milky
Shall we mix it
color.
all? Okay.
그러니까 어느 정도 넣는가는
Yeah.
자기에
Yeah.
맞추어서 진하게 할 수도 있고
Sure.
옅게 할 수도 있고.
So if you like the wild sesame seeds flavor, you can put more or less. And if you really cannot get wild sesame seed, it's okay not to use it. That's okay. Just use vegetable broth or half chicken broth, half vegetable broth. I think it really is up to how you would like it.
불을 좀 이제 켜서
Okay, we'll turn it on.
이게 다 익은 재료이기 때문에 끓는
Yeah.
거를 보여야겠죠. 이제 여기다가 앉히면 돼요,
Right.
전부.
So I also like to talk about 전골. 전골 is like a stew dish, but the difference from regular stew is that you basically cook at a table. But you don't have to cook too long because we already cooked all the ingredients. So you put it here and put the hot broth, and then sort
So
of
it's like a Chinese hot pot
yes,
or
exactly.
Japanese shabu shabu?
That's very similar idea, and you really want to enjoy that delicate flavor of the mushrooms. So you are not using beef broth here for that reason.
And once again, like you always do with Korean food, you're making it look so pretty.
Yes, color combinations, brown and white, and then we'll pass that mushrooms.
예, 이거는 그러니까 아까 얘기대로 가을에 그 송이가 나올 때로 제일로 치는 거예요.
So for mushrooms, we think its best time is autumn, fall, when you
'Cause
get
you can get
really
the wild ones.
fresh mushrooms,
You know,
and the flavor
mushrooms
is
have
best.
just boomed in popularity in the United
Yeah.
States, and I think this is a dish people are really
yes,
going to love.
and you know,
I
when
love mushrooms.
people are conscious about the health these days, they think mushroom is really a health food. It has lots
And it's
of
light.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and also we believe that it lowers the blood cholesterol, so it's considered to be as a health food.
그리고 또 로우
Without
칼로리.
Well, that's even
Yeah.
better.
And
Mushrooms are my favorite thing to eat, so they
and
might as well be
mushrooms
healthy.
is very low in calorie too.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
great.
and also supposed to prevent cancer too. So many good reasons to have to enjoy these mushroom
And I
dish.
had thought it was just because they taste good.
So that's one good reason. So here we have three kinds of mushrooms, a nice color with the red pepper, and the onions we have called 실파, slightly thinner kinds than regular onions. And then
just
what shall we
lovely.
put? The beef is
right in the
goes at
middle.
the
Can I
center.
do it?
네, 오케이.
Now
There.
we use hand
Like
usually,
this?
but
Oh, I'm
then
sorry. I'll do it down here.
So we put the beef at the center.
이렇게
Okay.
돼서 중요한
Looks
거는 아까
wonderful.
단맛을 하나도 안
Yeah.
넣었다는 거.
So the important thing with this dish is we really didn't use any sugar.
No.
That way you really enjoy the delicate flavor of all the vegetables and the
And
mushrooms.
hardly any fat at
No,
all.
not at all, really.
이제 국물이 끓고 있는데 간을 맞춰야겠죠. 저희다 간을 맞추려면
Yeah.
소금으로 좀
Yeah.
간을 한번
So Melanie,
맞춰주세요.
you can put a little bit of salt there because the broth basically do not have much salt. So put a little bit of salt there.
How much would you say? A big spoon or a little spoon?
생각하기에 여기 작은 거?
Just
작은
small.
걸로
Oh, that's
small.
too
Too
much.
much. All right,
yeah.
little
Just-
spoon.
Yeah. And once it's boiling, we will pour it over here. Very pretty.
여기다 이제 저걸
Yeah.
부어가지고서는 이제 끓이면 돼요. 끓이면서
Yeah.
먹는
Can you
거죠.
tell me about this pot? It's really lovely.
It's very
예,
pretty.
오랫동안
Yeah.
끓여서 이건 오지.
Yeah.
흙으로 구운 거예요.
These are kind of clay pot, and one reason you are using really thick clay pot is that it keeps the temperature high, and you can enjoy those, the temperature hot soup as you eat.
Yes, you know, in Korean restaurants, they bring the soup out and it's still bubbling like
right,
volcano.
And you know, all those are kind of clay pots, thick pots.
그리고 우리나라 발효 음식 할 때
Yeah.
김치나 무슨 간장, 된장 할 때도
that's
전부 여기다
right.
하죠.
Yeah, and another use is, we have 간장, 고추장, and kimchi. Those are all fermented food, and those fermented food also use this kind of thick pot. It's very important. Now we use plastic and in the refrigerator.
But it doesn't keep as well.
It doesn't keep as well, and they said the flavor actually is better when you use this kind of clay pot.
Well, it's natural.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
그 국물을
The water is
여기다
boiling.
부어주세요.
So shall we pour
네.
it here?
여기다 해서
Shall I turn it off?
예. 놓고
And
여기다가 한번
you will
부어주시죠.
pour it. Let's see.
Carefully, I don't want to splash it.
There.
Whoa.
Okay.
And I don't want to mess up this beautiful design either.
그러니까 찌개는 국물이 그러니까 국보다 전골은 좀
Yeah.
적지요.
Yeah.
국은 우리는
Do I pour all of it in?
다 넣으시죠. 예.
Let's see. Yeah.
그치?
That's good. Shall we put more?
네,
This,
more.
put
네.
more? Yeah, she thinks we can put more.
넉넉하게.
And this is more like a jjigae. I'm sure you've heard the word jjigae. The difference from jjigae and kuk is we actually have less liquid and more ingredients. So you get to enjoy more the ingredients than just the soup.
More like a stew.
Yes, yes.
이제 이거를 끓여가면서 먹는 거예요. 그렇죠?
So this is all ready, and what we do is at the table, you boil it as you eat, you cook it as you eat.
Oh, that's
so that's the fun
wonderful.
part of it.
And then you take it piece by piece.
As you, the ingredients that you would like. So here we have 버섯전골. How do you like today's recipe, Melanie?
I think it's something so unusual that I've never had, but as a big mushroom lover, I can't wait to try it.
And it's so pretty. And you can present this to any table for guests, for family, in a very sophisticated.
It's a really special party dish. I think, you know, like they like fondue parties. This would be like a fondue party.
Yeah. So I'd like to show you the ingredients one more time and the procedure how you cook it.
Koreans are no different from other people in enjoying food with mushrooms. They savor the great variety of mushrooms and use them in many dishes. Songi-posot, pine mushrooms, which grow on pine tree trunks, are very rare and expensive in Korea. This is because it is very difficult to cultivate them, and we can get them only in September and October. Hyogo-posot, oak mushrooms, which are grown on oak logs or on shi trees, are brown and meaty mushrooms. In old times, because of their very savory taste, they were used in every dish, especially with meat. At that time, there weren't any seasonings or spices in Korea. They were used as seasonings in every dish, so pyogo was a good substitute for seasonings. Nuttari-posot are unique, common, and popular in Korea. They are not difficult to cultivate and have short cultivating period of only 2 weeks. And we can get them all year round. Moreover, they are outrageously cheap. So nuttari are most preferred by Korean housewives these days, but they are very rare and quite expensive in Western countries. Sometimes, mushrooms are used as topping, or gomyeong, in pan-fried food such as posotchon. After dropping the batter on the hot pan, put the mushroom toppings and other fresh vegetables on it. In almost every Korean food, you can see this topping for decoration as well as flavor. As mushrooms are more and more popular these days, there are many mushroom dishes in great variety. One of them is posotsam. First, prepare the various mushrooms and blanch them. Cut the fresh vegetables such as carrot, cabbage, and cucumber into thin strips. When every ingredient is prepared, make a parcel of various vegetables and posot. Then, wrap it up in a cabbage leaf for a bite-sized vegetarian snack. These days, mushrooms are also considered as health food, and it is said that they are actually good for some diseases. So mushrooms are more and more enjoyed by Korean people. How about trying these mushrooms for yourself?
It's nice and boiling. I think we can start. Since Mrs. Han worked so hard to teach us, let's let her start first. 선생님 먼저 하십시오.
네.
And
이렇게
she
돼서
can show us how to do it.
Yes.
고루고루 뜨지요. 뭐 고기 좋아하나? 난 고기
Yeah.
좋아하니까 고기도 하고. 네.
So you get to pick the ingredients that you like. If you
Yeah.
like beef, you get some beef, mushrooms, different kind of mushrooms.
국물도 같이.
Smells very good. Why don't you start here?
You know, I think a lot of Westerners think that Korean food is very time-consuming and intimidating, but frankly, this takes much less time than your average Western soup.
I think that's the big difference from Western stew. Stew or soup sounds like you cook for a long time, but this one, the preparation wasn't too bad, and you're actually cooking, on the table, so you can actually enjoy the fresh flavor of
Yeah,
the
I
mushrooms.
think it keeps those mushrooms fresher that you cook at such a
I
short
guess some for
time.
me. Love the mushrooms.
The other thing is,
Uh-huh.
I want to ask you, normally in the West, a soup might be served before a meal as an appetizer. And I know when I lived in Hong Kong, it was always the end of the meal. When do you eat it in
우리는
Korea?
언제든지 국물을 좋아하기 때문에 무엇든지 함께 국물을 함께 하죠.
Koreans love liquid soup, so we have to have liquid with every meal. So you start all at the same time. You put all the banchans, rice, and bowl of soup.
At every meal.
Every meal. And we love soup so much, actually. Bowl of soup, bowl of rice, and bowl of kimchi will satisfy any Koreans.
Even breakfast?
Even breakfast, that's right.
언제든지
Yeah.
국물부터 먹고
Yeah.
그다음에 먹어요. 항상 국물 뜨거.
So the way you start actually is you start with the soup. You have 1 spoonful of soup.
Of the broth.
Of the broth, and then start with something else. So that's how Koreans always eat.
일반적인 한국 음식은 매운 것이 많은 걸로 생각이 되는데 이렇게 우리가 지금까지 하는 양반 궁중 음식은 이렇게 매운 것이 없는데 이렇게 빨간 고추 정도 넣어서 매운 맛을
Have a slight
첨가해요.
hint. Yeah. So usually you will think the Korean jjigae or soup is all red color. You have a lot of red pepper as a seasoning. This one is not, and you use slightly, slight those couple of those red pepper.
But they don't make the soup
They
hot.
don't make the soup hot, and in general, when it's a palace food or it's kind of a nice food, we tend not to use too much pepper.
This has a very light and rich flavor. I
very
think
good
because the
flavor.
mushrooms are cooked such a little time, and the broth, I actually thought when you were cooking that it would have almost no flavor, but it's really very delicate and
Very
lovely.
delicate. And before you mentioned about shabu shabu, and the difference probably is when we make 전골, we always cook the ingredients. Most of the ingredients are cooked in advance, and then you put it. Therefore, you reduce the cooking time, and each has its own flavor. We can keep that
There's
way.
another difference. In shabu shabu, people eat right out of the pot. Do you do that with this
You
dish
can
too?
actually do that too. Yeah.
I think that's something that some Westerners, it makes them a little uncomfortable. They're worried about health. Can you tell
Yeah.
me why you do this?
Well, I think it's important to understand, the sense of community. It's very important for Koreans, our family, our home, and those sense. So making a big pot of soup and you share it at a table, it has a very good, that community sense we share. So I know sometimes for Westerners it's a little bit intimidating. You are using same pot, and at restaurant I know they serve with this kind of thing where you can serve your own stuff. But at family, when you are invited to Korean family, they will share right out from the pot, and that's what we like to do.
Then you must be careful not to have someone that picks out all the best mushrooms.
You just have to get going back and get you what you want. Once you enjoy the pleasure of Korean soup with your meal, you will be truly eating like Koreans. Thank you, Mrs. Han, for coming today.
고맙습니다.
Thank you, Melanie, for
Thank
coming.
you.
And I hope to see you again next week on More Than Kimchi. Until then, 안녕히 계세요.
안녕히 계세요.